Well, to talk about the anniversary, we're now joined by veteran journalist and CPAC contributor Julie Van Dusen and national reporter with the Globe and Mail, Kristy Kirkup. Hello to both of you.
Hi there.
Listen, Julie, I'm going to begin with you because you were actually on the Hill the day of the shooting, and I'm wondering if you could take us back there. What do you remember about hearing the first shots and how people were reacting to it?
Yeah, well, it's embedded in my brain forever, that's for sure. And it was one of those ordinary days where you don't expect anything except to go up and cover caucus, which was always fun. Wednesdays are very busy. And I would just finish with Stephen Blaney, who was the public safety minister for Stephen Harper at the time. And Mike DePaul, cameraman, and Danny Leduc, soundman, we were all chatting.
Both at CBC, where we both worked before.
Yeah, and the MPs had gone into their respective meetings. So I said, hey guys, like, I'll get the money, and you know, if you want to go up to the 5th floor to the cafeteria and buy the muffins and all that stuff. So, oh yeah, great. So I wandered down to the foyer, where I'd left my purse and all my junk, you know, teenager's bedroom. And, you know, I picked up my purse, emptied it all over the place looking for coins, and all of a sudden, like, all hell broke loose. People were running down from the rotunda, you know, the rotunda area that's right under the Peace Tower, and racing towards the foyer where I was, and saying, run, there's a shooter. And you know, at the time, your brain just doesn't compute. Like, I'm in the middle of getting coins for coffee. What? A shooter?
It's so out of the normal. Like, I mean, it's our place of work.
It's our place of work. And so I said to Danny, is this for real? He says, it's for real. And so everybody started scattering. And so I ran into the House of Commons because I thought maybe I could hide under a desk, right? Because all the MPs were in their meetings. Maybe I could hide under a desk. And then I thought, oh my God, the guy's probably looking for an MP. So I raced back out of there. Like, all this is happening very quickly, and you're trying to think, where do I go? So then I ran into the women's washroom, and I put the toilet seat down. There's 2 cubicles in there. I stood on it so he couldn't see my feet underneath. And then I thought, like, you're an idiot. He's just going to, what, women's washroom? I'm not going in here. So I thought, no, this isn't a good plan. So I raced out of there. And then I thought, where do I go? So Peter Van Loan's assistant, Darlene, who I knew, thank God, she was just opening.
Peter Van Loan, former minister in the Harper government as well. Right,
and he was House Leader, so he had an office right off the foyer. She was just opening the door and said, Julie, get in here. So I ran in, and you know, to make a long story short, we just tried to figure out what are we going to do here. Meanwhile, there was so much screaming and sounds. I'll never forget the sounds. I mean, when we first heard all the banging, I thought it was scaffolding because there was construction going on the Hill. But then it was like nuts, because if you recall, we didn't know any of this at the time. I mean, Michael Zehab Bibo was shot more than 30 times. So there's shots ringing out everywhere. There's gunpowder. I'd never smelled gunpowder in my life. And we know, like, is this really happening? Like, you are frozen with fear. So that was our little lair where we kind of harbored for 7 hours. And we were just trying to figure out, what do we do if this guy comes through the door? So we very quietly put all the furniture. We didn't want to make any noise because we were under Stephen Harper's office. We were right in the foyer. Like, if something was going to happen, it could all come our way. So we were being very, very quiet. And then his fireplace, we took all the pokers out. And he had a bunch of green apples on the table and some gummy witches. It was before Halloween, which is what we ate all day for 7 hours. We didn't want to touch the apples because in case they came through the door, one of us was going to skewer them with the poker, and the others were going to bop them with the apples. That was our, you know, lame way of defending ourselves. So that is kind of what happened for 7 hours, and until they released us. Like, we were in there at 10, and they released us about 5 when the SWAT team was going from door to door banging to see who was where.
And of course, you know, part of that is the fact that we didn't know if it was a single shooter at the time, right? It's unfolding. There's so much chaos. And as I said earlier in the program, Kristy, it wasn't just Center Block that was affected, because of course the shooting also happened at the National War Memorial, and that's where Nathan Cirillo was killed. You spoke to people who were there on that day. What do they remember?
You know, I have found it, going back and talking particularly to civilians who came to the aid of Nathan Cirillo that day, you know, what they did was tremendously brave because, of course, I think naturally there was the instinct among many to run away when they heard shots in the downtown core. And there were a few people who decided to run toward the gunfire. A former nurse, a government lawyer, someone, a public servant who was working for the National Defense Department at the time. And they rushed to Nathan Cirillo's aid, and they were trying to save his life. And again, at this point, again, the gunman did, he shot Nathan Cirillo 3 times in the back, and he was quickly able to make his way to Parliament Hill. And this was, by the way, unbeknownst to those who were at the Cenotaph, who, again, were just coming, they were just acting on instinct. They were coming to his aid. They were trying to resuscitate him, chest compressions, mouth to mouth, trying to apply pressure to his wounds because there was a considerable amount of bleeding. And of course, there's quite a famous interview now with Barbara Winters, the government lawyer, who she was involved in the resuscitation efforts, but she did tell Nathan Cirillo that he was loved in his final moments. And so going back and talking to those people, it's so real for them. And it almost, when you talk to them about it, it's almost as if it was yesterday for them. It's tremendously painful. And there's been an added layer, I would say, that's compounded the trauma because they feel as though, and at Rideau Hall, they weren't formally recognized in a ceremony where, personnel on Parliament Hill, the security personnel were. And it's not to take away from those who were honored. It's like these people got pins in the mail. Barbara Winters learned that, she was getting an accommodation. She learned on a piece of paper that arrived on Christmas Eve. So there's this element of feeling like their role at the Cenotaph that day and kind of what they did and their acts of both bravery and compassion that those haven't really been formally recognized, particularly by the Governor General.
Can I jump in there? Because we did hear today Charlie Angus saying that they need to be recognized. And I want to play a little bit of what we heard from Charlie Angus in the House Commons. Take a listen to this.
I didn't sleep much that night, and early the next morning I felt the need to go to the Cenotaph in the darkness to be where Nathan Cirillo had been killed. And there were hundreds of people already there. They were there from all walks of life, and I've never forgotten that moment because I thought, this is who we are as a nation. This is what we do in the face of violence. We don't return hate. We came together as a city, as a nation. That's what we have to remember from this day.
Without a doubt, Charlie Angus is still moved. And when I think about it, I was trying to listen to the podcast that you were on today on the Decibel, and I was finding a hard time listening to the podcast going back to that day. Very quickly from the both of you, how do you think that incident changed what we do here in Ottawa on Parliament Hill?
Well, just briefly, that incident changed a lot of people, including the guards. Many of them have PTSD. One committed suicide. A lot of people were very marked by that. Just as a reporter, just really simply, I don't go into a room without knowing where the exits are and where I can hide. And I never had to do that before. Having worked on the Hill for many years, having gone there as a kid, my dad worked there. For me, it was my second home, and that day, that was destroyed. And now, of course, we've got a whole different layer of abuse for politicians that's, coming at them in their day-to-day lives. All the people that used to, sit in their basements and say angry things. A lot of them are coming to the Hill and screaming them at MPs. It's an atmosphere that's pretty fraught with a lot of tension. And that day, for sure, changed everything in terms of the security, in terms of, you just don't walk up there anymore. And there's guns everywhere. It's just not the same place.
Kristy?
Yeah, I was going to pick up on the security piece as well, because one of the things that people may remember from that day is Stephen Harper was speaking to the Conservative caucus at the time when, again, all of this gunfire was taking place in the Hall of Honor, and he was ushered away to, essentially like a closet, right? A small confined space. They were trying to hide him away because the Prime Minister's protective detail at that time did not have the jurisdiction to be there on Parliament Hill. It was like they had handed him over, right, to the House of Common Security. And so Harper really, pushed for the creation of the Parliamentary Protective Service. But a decade later, there's still, the RCMP's union is still kind of fighting to say we should have jurisdiction. And so there have been sweeping changes, but there, again, to Julie's point, are a lot of questions that remain about the security posture on the Hill, again, given the fact that there are evolving threats today.
Evolving, and of course today just remembering a horrible incident that happened 10 years ago. Julie, Kristy, thank you for that.
Thank you.